Studio Kingsley is proud to dedicate the following chapter of Princess Kitty to Elizabeth II, who has ruled over England as Queen for 70 years. May she rest in peace. Chapter 28, in which Katie of Koriko has returned, and a cat parade takes over Main Street. Tuesday had come to the city of Kodono. With 6 days left before the end of her 3-week expedition, Princess Kitty moved farther and farther into the streets. Eventually, she ended up in the front facade of a theater. Looking up at the marquee, it read, "Now performing, Dick Whittington and his cat, a pantomime." Once she tries opening one of the doors, she found that it was locked. However, no door should remain locked for someone like her. So she took a deep breath and deeply focused on the door. With a twist of her neck, the door was immediately unlocked and went inside. Looking around the lobby, it appears to be deserted, except she heard voices from inside the auditorium. They sound outraged. The Mercury Theater, the building that she's in, was run by 2 managers, Stuart Rochelle and Trevor Milliken, once colleagues from Carrigan University. Mr. Stuart Rochelle was solidly built, with a ponytail on the back of his brown hair, probably to match his flamboyant ego. Mr. Trevor Milliken has a short, rotund figure with cropped blonde hair and a shaven face. He often dresses formally, but occasionally wears simpler clothing. Before the parade, Mayor Donovan has put these 2 in charge of organizing it. But last night, the marching band, the entertainers, and performers were all given dishes of salmon fillet for dinner, only for them to succumb to food poisoning later that Tuesday. Surely they're still alive, given that they're under critical care from the local hospital. The cook who served the undercooked salmon fillet was immediately fired from his job. After the food poisoning, Mr. Rochelle suffered the most stress. Not only he didn't tell the mayor about the band's predicament, but he is unable to find replacements. Peering her head inside the doors, she can hear the 2 managers. "We'll surely be in deep sludge," Mr. Rochelle said. "There's no way we're going to find replacements. The doctors told me that they will recover in 2 days. 2 days is like a punch to the puss. Like heartburn that never dissipates," Mr. Milliken said. "I knew that we should have hired a professional cook. I fear that people are going to be disappointed today." "I don't care if they're going to be disappointed, Milliken. This is the dirigible Providence we're talking about, as well as the bicentennial celebration," Mr. Rochelle barked. "And in order to welcome said bicentennial, there has to be a parade to celebrate, which will begin in half an hour. Therefore, we only got 10 minutes to leave before you get a replacement. Heaven forbid injecting some urgency into this occasion, but for God's sake, just think of something!" Princess Kitty has heard enough. Surely she'll be able to help them now. It could only mean one thing to her. She has to bring forth that notorious Katie of Koriko. Stepping out of the theater, she stumbles near a phone booth. Pulling out her magic scepter, she went inside. "I shall bring forth Katie of Koriko once again in this city," she said. "Following that, all the early antics shall be unspoken and accursed forever." Raising her scepter in the air, she sings an incantation to it. "I once again shall use my wand to fulfill more of my wishes. It takes a moment to respond, as long as it still swishes. Mew, mew, mew." She stopped waving her scepter. There was a glow at the end of it for about 5 seconds before dimming. So she waves her scepter again and sings. "I know it's time to use my wand, as long as it still swishes. I know there's power from beyond, fulfilling more of my wishes. Mew, mew, mew." The scepter begins to glow brighter and envelops her in a flash of light inside the phone booth. It took less than 20 seconds before it dimmed. The scepter she possessed was gone. but from where she stood, she was transformed just like before, except she was in the same height. Her triangular ears became flesh-colored and round, having them move to the sides of her head. Her long tail is nowhere to be seen. Her cat-like face becomes more human like everyone else. Her hairstyle was different. Her hair was short, with pigtails on each side. And just like before, the color of her hair, as well as her eyes, remained unchanged. At least her clothes were changed. Her dress was replaced with a black tailcoat tuxedo with gloves and a top hat. But instead of pants, she had short bloomers on to accentuate her legs with black high heels. She stepped out of the phone booth and back into the theater. "But shall we give Donovan the bad news anyway?" Mr. Milliken asked. "Shall we postpone it for 2 days?" "The Zeppelin is already underway," Mr. Rochelle said. "It must be halfway across the Atlantic by now. We give him the bad news, and he will have our heads." Katie barges into the auditorium. The men were shocked, mostly at the clothes she wore. "Can I help you?" Mr. Rochelle asked.
"If you're desperate for a replacement, maybe I can help,"
she said. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we're not in the mood for amateurs," Mr. Rochelle said. "We want professionals by 30 minutes. And second, have you ever organized a parade before?" Mr. Milliken asked.
"There's always a first time for anything,"
she said, as she walks closer to him.
"What's so wrong about it?"
Mr. Rochelle raised his hands. "I'm sorry, but we must decline. We can't accept amateurs. Mr. Milliken, would you kindly escort this girl out while I head to the restroom?" "Yes, sir," he said, as Mr. Rochelle left the auditorium. "You heard Mr. Rochelle, miss," Mr. Milliken told her. "I must ask you to leave, but she doesn't give up that easy."
"Sir, with all due respect, I must decline," she said. "First of all, do you have any idea who you're talking to?"
"Who am I talking to?"
"Katie of Koriko,
"Koriko?"
where I come from."
"Look, Katie, ma'am, I do not want—"
"I personally guarantee it, sir. You and this Mr. Rochelle won't be disappointed. You see, in the place of the sick, the parade celebrating the dirigible will have entertainers and performers of feline adornments."
"You can't be serious, ma'am."
"Don't take seriously the cat who mourns for a mouse. When the cat mourns for the mouse, do not take her seriously. Now, will you, or will you not, let me show you these healthy and perfectly trained replacements?"
He nervously looks at his wristwatch. I mean, what other options should he ever have? Giving up, he asked, "Are you sure they're coming this way?" She went up onto the center of the stage and smiled.
"It won't be long now."
Her scepter appears in her hand from within her. The star was replaced with a pink heart. He groaned. "God, am I going to regret this?"
"Who said?"
she asked. She then placed her scepter on the ground and lets go. It remains standing as she begins to whisper at the top like a microphone.
"Hear me, cats of the city. In the name of the kingdom, I order you, come to me. Either you are a pet or a stray, you will come to me. It is time for the cat parade."
Of course, he would be spooked by her unpleasant behavior, because as she whispers,
"Come to me, come to me,"
over and over again, the heart begins to brighten and begins to beat at the same time. The heartbeats in Katie's whisper can be heard outside the theater, but there is one exception. Only the cats in the north side of the city can hear it. As soon as they hear it, they meow strangely as they slowly begin to head for the source. Leaping out from trash cans and alleys, climbing out of fences and out of open windows, they trek into the streets. On the north side, there was sheer pandemonium as drivers slam on their brakes. Cars skid to a halt to prevent them from hitting hundreds of cats who strode onto the pavement, but in the process, they caused many minor accidents. Even Flanagan and Norm stopped their car to see what's going on, and try to find out why.
What's with all the wee kitties wandering over the streets?
Flanagan asked dumbly. Looking at the accidents the cats cause, he asked,
Should we arrest them for causing a sheer ruckus? Handcuffs are too big for their little paws. They'll slide right out. What are we going to use instead of handcuffs?
None of us has any idea what's going on here recently, Norm said. From what I've heard, no astonishing thing ever happened here until now. They didn't question the order of things until now. No matter what, we still know that Kodono is just an ordinary city.
Used to be,
Flanagan groaned.
This city is not so ordinary anymore.
This is all unnatural, like the flying clothes and the girl who stopped those robbers, Norm said. But I think it's best just to ignore it and get on with our duty. There was a huge bang, and they saw a large, obese cat flopped onto the hood of the cruiser. Its coat is white, and on its entire left ear, there was a distinctive dark mark. Turning around to look at the officers for a moment, it turned back and slides off the cruiser with its weight before joining the fray of felines. The officers looked at each other before Flanagan spoke.
First bottle's on me, after we take the rest of the day and tomorrow off.
Agreed. Norm nodded. Meanwhile, the cats continue further and further toward the theater. When Mr. Milliken watched Katie on stage, there was a strange meowing from outside that snapped him out of it. He got up and left the auditorium. In the lobby, he heard the countless sounds of scratching. With curiosity getting the better of him, he went and opened the doors, and a swarm of cats came flooding in. He screamed as they marched toward the auditorium through the open door. Mr. Rochelle came back from the restroom, but even he was shocked at the sight of the cats.
What the devil?
Mr. Rochelle exclaimed.
What are these cats doing here, barging into our theater?
Don't look at me! It wasn't my fault! Mr. Milliken stammered. It was Katie. She brought all those cats here. Just ask her.
Katie?
The girl from Koriko. The girl who refused to leave the theater after I told her to.
I'll take care of her. You call animal control.
Yes, sir, Mr. Milliken said as he heads to the phone booth outside. Meanwhile, Mr. Rochelle found himself overwhelmed with cats. He makes his way past them while trying not to step on someone's tail. One cat had his claws hooked onto his leg, but he shooed him off. He rushes through the auditorium doors to find Katie on the stage being surrounded by hundreds of these felines of every size and breed, meowing, purring, rubbing their heads, and lying on the theater seats. To keep them fed, she showers them with crackers that shaped like fish. Once she saw him again, she smiled and asked,
Back so soon? What is the meaning of all these cats?
He demanded.
I see that you've met my replacements.
Replacements? You call these furballs our replacements?
Control yourself, Mr. Rochelle. I know what I'm doing.
Control myself? You bring these cats to make a nuisance in my theater, and you're telling me to control myself?
There was a terrible scream, and Mr. Milliken staggers back into the auditorium.
What is it?
Mr. Rochelle asked.
I was in the phone booth to call animal control by these cats,
Mr. Milliken screamed.
But when I called the operator, I saw a mouse coming out of the mouthpiece, and I screamed. I dropped the receiver and ran.
She giggles weakly.
I see that you're not the kind of person who takes antics.
You could have given me an anxiety attack,
Mr. Milliken screamed.
If these cats are really our replacements,
Mr. Rochelle said,
then I think you need to be more precise. The parade demands human performers. It does not ask for animals.
Oh, don't tell me you're allergic to cats,
she smirked.
Are you?
Have you any idea how embarrassing it will be?
Seeing that some of the people would be alienophiles, maybe these cats will improve their self-esteem.
I'm sorry, do you have ears? You haven't listened to a word I've said. If you talk about their self-esteem, what about mine? I'll be the laughingstock of the theatrical community for the rest of my life.
Do you want me to do something about it? Make an improvement?
Anything! Just as long as they look human enough! She sighs.
Suddenly I feel very persuasive, especially those who are desperate. But I'll do what I must do.
She raised her scepter in the air, and the top of it glows, causing the cats to meow loudly as their bodies begin to shake and mutate. Their bodies grew bigger, and their hips are readjusted to a humanoid position, making them stand on their hind legs. By the time it's done, they all stand just like a man, about 4 feet in height. Of course, that makes Mr. Rochelle and Mr. Milliken completely unnerved. Clearly, this isn't exactly what they had in mind. How am I going to explain all this to Donovan? Mr. Rochelle groaned.
Well, look at the time,
She said.
Guess they're all ready for the parade, huh?
Oh, for the love of... Mr. Rochelle was frustrated. Make sure these furballs of yours better keep my reputation intact. Got it?
Always willing to help.
She smiled.
You won't believe the great things I've done to other people.
She banged the end of her scepter onto the floor, making the cats pay attention to her as she announces,
Listen, my cats. The time has come. Here I shall bring forth the spectacle of spectacles, beyond human imagination.
The cats cry out, Everything depends on what you can do. It must be believed to be seen.
Onward! Onward!
She cried. Easier said than done. The cats began to walk out of the auditorium on their hind legs, and in the process, clothes began to form onto their bodies, while some of them are still naked, much to the shock of the 2 managers. So the managers decided to follow the cats outside. You think the city folk are going to be convinced if these cats are talented midgets in costume, in case reporters decide to question us? Mr. Milliken suggested. Just keep your schnoz out of trouble and think about what you said, Mr. Rochelle snapped. Upon heading out of the theater, they gasped to see the girl on top of a large floating ship hovering above the street. It was a triple-masted schooner full of 12 men. An additional man is at the wheel. They can only watch as the ship glides away from the facade of the theater and follows the cats. Katie of Koriko has done it again. This time, she manipulates the cats from the north side of Kodono, like marionettes on strings. Cats of every size and of every breed. For the parade to be magical than the one that was intended, cats had to become much more advanced. Katie has taught the cats to utilize not only their own energy, but also the energy of both the world and the city around them. The cats Kitty manipulates shall do her bidding just for today. That could only mean one thing, and it was this. Like the flying clothes on Sunday, unexpected occurrences will once again plague onto the superstitious people in their humble city by the sea. There was nothing about these cobblestone streets to suggest that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over Main Street. Todd and Audrey Pratchett were standing on the sidewalks with their father, among enormous crowds of people, eagerly awaiting for the parade to commence. The excitement and anticipation seemed intense. Also filling the sidewalks were vendors that sell lemonade, popcorn, hot dogs, peanuts, and ice cream in their stands for just 60 cents. Although it wasn't like the coming summer fair, the parade has made the people anticipate it even more. The Pratchetts were both dressed in elegant style, primarily Audrey with a yellow dress. Why don't you stay with your sister while I go buy some popcorn for the 3 of us, Todd? Mr. Pratchett asked. Okay, his son said. Can we also have ice cream later? Audrey squeaked. We'll see, her father smiled, as he heads off toward the popcorn stand. Probably this'll give enough time for the children to be alone with their thoughts. Maybe thoughts of their precious Princess Kitty, for they are unaware about the things she had done for the past 2.5 weeks. I was wondering if Kitty can see this parade from the rooftops, Audrey said. I get that feeling too, sis, Todd said. The parade might start any minute. Looking up at the roof of one of the buildings, where a person named Phineas Trout reports on the parade, he said, and I was hoping Grandpa and the others enjoy themselves back home.
Apparently, Audrey nodded.
But we can't wait for her to see us again.
Yep, just 1 week left.
Meanwhile, at the Pratchett house, Mrs. Pratchett had to stay and care for the 4 grandparents, especially if they're excited about the parade on Main Street, which was broadcast on their radio.
I think at this point, Grandpa Jack said, the children will stop at nothing to be in that summer fair. Especially when that dirigible everyone's been talking about is going to come here,
Grandma Eileen moaned.
It's pretty much inevitable. We did hear news that the Providence has already been departed for her transatlantic crossing from Empire City. But what then? Something tells me that this summer fair would end in unpleasant consequences. I just hope an uncertain future won't even come to our grandchildren.
Oh, Eileen, Grandpa Jack said.
I'm just as concerned as you about their safety, but I'm sure they will be well protected. I really hate to see you all fearful about that Zeppelin. You don't even have the power to see the future as do us all.
Oh, just stop worrying and enjoy the parade, Mrs. Pratchett said as she came into the room. My children are with their father on Main Street, and when the summer fair is here, I'm sure everything works out perfectly in the end.
They altogether were 329 years old, Grandpa Jack said. Of course everything will turn out right.
He then reached out a hand to her.
Here now, help me make my way to the backyard. I would like to get some sun.
She helped him up and take him to the backyard. If you wish to come back inside, you let me know, she said before heading back. But that's when Grandpa Jack had that feeling again. Surely something odd would happen at Main Street, after he had heard of the news of other occurrences happening. None of the family knew who was responsible. Well, all but him.
Look!
Audrey squeaked at Todd on Main Street. The parade is starting! Easier said than done. The parade has begun. Now the citizens expected to have a marching band, performers, and entertainers. But my readers, this parade will be different. It starts when the people saw 2 Japanese bobtails riding high-wheeled tricycles. They had long hind legs that reached the pedals, and the sight of them made the people, including Todd and Audrey, swore that they were seeing things, at least at first. The Japanese bobtails rang.
Neko no paredo o hajimimashou. Kare ga tori o totte koshi suru no mite.
At the sight of the cats striding through Main Street on their hind legs, dressed in their fashionable clothes, it was futile for the people to question. The children, however, except Todd and Audrey, were the most amazed. They come for a show, and a show is what they shall get.
Oh, look what's coming down the street! Cats at the parade! They're all cute!
They all chattered. One brown-haired little girl in short pigtails cried out to her mother and father,
Look at these cute cats that can walk! They look real!
Her mother laughed.
Oh, you have a writer's gift for imagination. Those aren't real cats. They're men in costumes.
Would you please enjoy the parade? Her father asked. The little girl was saddened and said,
I still think they're real.
Meanwhile, at the local pub on Main Street, Flanagan and Norm were taking the day and Wednesday off. They were drinking, but behind them, the parade is already marching through the street.
You know, I used to see stuff like that when I was a wee lad growing up in the old country, Flanagan said. You know, things happen for no particular reason, that kind of thing.
From what I've heard, when you're young, it seems so real, Norm said. No wonder we've been behaving like this. Maybe we should see a doctor tomorrow just to make sure.
Oh, come on, Norman. We don't have to. When this is all over, I'm sure things will be back to the way they were. See to it that the city will be ordinary again.
Both officers chuckled. But isn't that weird enough? Norm asked. Now, why do you think things happen in Kodono today? Are they really harmless, or some nefarious prank by a bunch of teenage punks?
Your guess is as good as mine, Norman, Flanagan said. What do you think how the people behave this way like this?
He takes another drink.
I get it! I get it! Is their brain playing tricks?
It could be a possibility. Their brain plays tricks on them when they're young.
Things that exist in fairy tales like Tinkerbell or Sleeping Beauty. They're all in their heads because of...
Because of what?
I don't know. Probably all the fairy stories people tell them as a kid.
How could that be?
It plants the seed in their brains. So as a kid, they think it's real, but in reality, it's not.
Well, that explains a whole awful lot. It's foolish to believe it. But still, weird stuff still happens no matter what you do and where you are.
Unless you drink hard enough and wind up with a very bad hangover.
More like dying from alcohol poisoning. Norman, I think the brain is a very frightening thing. You think things and then you see them whether real or not.
As soon as Flanagan turns around and saw the parade, he threw up his arms and cried,
"Can't we just take a break from this for one day? Just one day!"
Norm turns around and saw the parade too. "This is what I'm talking about," he said. While the cat parade is going on, a swarm of Russian blues came striding down, dressed in their red uniforms, playing their kotsuzumi drums, their kotos, and their bamboo flutes. And then, a sight almost made their hairs stand on end, including the children and Phineas Trout, who reports the parade. It was a huge ship floating above the cats, an important triple-masted schooner. It was wide enough to cover the broad gap between the road buildings. On board stood 12 men at the rail, smiling and looking down at the people. An additional man was at the wheel. On the front sail lies a red symbol in Japanese. Neko. They don't know why it's so intimidating, to be honest. It looks like something out of a forgotten, magnificent, old-fashioned fairy tale. Only this is the real thing. Soon it was close enough for the people to read the name on the vessel that floats over them. It was a name many people have known.
"Hey!" a man calls out. "I know that ship. That's the Spirit of Freedom."
The Spirit of Freedom?
A woman asked.
It can't be. The ship was last at sea 100 years ago. What's it doing here floating on Main Street?
"Wait a minute," another man said. "Look at the people on board, including that man at the wheel. Are they who I think they are?"
"Yeah," another shouted. "Those are the old neighbors of our city. And that man on the wheel, I think he's founder Ezra Kadono."
The mayor's and founder of our city?
A woman screamed.
Are they ghosts? I think so,
A boy said.
It's like they're back from the dead.
"Look!"
A man points up at the bow of the ship. Kitty of Koriko peers down at the baffled people from the bow of the Spirit of Freedom, smiling and banging an iron scale with a wooden spoon and announcing,
Meow, meow, here and now. Meow, meow, all here now. The cats are all here, so let's have some fun. Let's bring a gay smile to each and every one. A cat parade is out of an allure stream, so keep your eyes open, for nothing's what they seem. If every dog has its day, then why not every cat? Cats are made superior, and this is where it's at. There are no dogs here, only cats in this parade. All these cats are harmless, so do not be afraid. Spectacle of spectacles from every size and breed. If you have anxiety, then this is what you really need. We celebrate the summer fair, this is what we do. We hope you enjoy yourself and never be so blue. The cat parade is starting now because I say so. So just sit back and please enjoy the show.
Then the cats join in.
Meow, meow, meow.
Todd was only paying attention to the girl on the bow, having a familiar feeling that he has seen her before.
"What is it?"
Audrey asked.
"I know that girl from somewhere, but I can't for the life of me remember where," he said. "Her face, her hair, and eyes are so familiar. It's as if we remember her before." "I saw her too," his sister said when she saw Katie. "Are you thinking that girl is actually—"
Then there came a sting on the back of his neck, and he cried out.
"What?"
Audrey asked.
"I just got bitten in the back of the neck by something,"
he said, feeling sick. When Audrey saw the back of his neck, she said,
"I don't see any bite. By the way, you were about to say something." "No, I didn't," he said. "I heard you say something. Something about thinking the girl could actually be someone we know." "I don't know, sis. I don't know who she is. Maybe that girl with the pink hair."
Then she realized.
"Oh, I get it. I think..."
Then there came a sting on the back of her neck, and she screamed. "Are you bitten too?" he asked. "Yeah, on the back of my neck," she wailed. "Is it going to get infected?" When he saw the back of her neck and saw no bite, he said, "Well, I don't know about you. Something very odd has happened to us." Apparently it did, Todd, thanks to a mysterious woman that was out into the sidewalk. An elegantly beautiful woman of an indeterminate age with well-groomed blonde hair. It was none other than the highly notorious Charlotte Lenoir. You once saw her before when she boards the Maybelle after it was docked back to Moymoor Harbor. Also joining her was a handsome black-haired man with a matching mustache and goatee dressed in gray. In order to keep them from realizing that the girl is actually Princess Kitty in her persona, he sends 2 invisible insects called Kambosho to sting the children in the back of their necks, making them forget completely, for they must know that they'll see her at the time of the bicentennial celebration. Mr. Pratchett came back with the popcorn. "Sorry it took so long," he said. "I got distracted by the parade. Can you believe it? All these midgets dressed as cats?" "I don't think they're midgets," Todd realized. "Those are real cats." "Are they really? I thought they're midgets. By the way, if they are real cats, who's responsible?" "Probably that girl up on that boat," Audrey said, pointing up. Mr. Pratchett looked up in disbelief, looking up at Katie with the spirit of freedom hovering over, but to him, he thought it was a parade balloon, disguised as the well-known ship. "Are these cats of yours real, or are they midgets?" he asked Katie. "I don't think she heard you," Todd said. "Wait a minute. That hairstyle, that hair color, could that... Oh, it's Kitty! Therefore it's Princess Kitty!" "Impossible. That's not Kitty up there. That's someone else. Kitty's going to meet us at the time of the fair." "I know it was her, children. You told me it was her in disguise." "Dad, please stop. That is not Princess Kitty up there." Mr. Pratchett sighed. "I don't understand you. It's like you want..." That's when he realized that Todd is showing the phase of growing up. But he brushed it off, saying, "Todd Pratchett, that's the most stupidest thing I ever heard, and you should be ashamed. I know that you and your sister still believe in something that isn't real like Princess Kitty, and us persuading you to grow up. Who knows, if she does understand." There was an announcement from Katie, calling out,
"Here comes a feline couple! You see, they were separated from war, but now they're reunited here, never to be separated again. Wishing us a happy day!"
The people now see an Abyssinian in a dark tuxedo, dancing with a white Persian in a red dress on a moving platform, accompanied by an orchestra playing a waltz. While dancing, the Abyssinian announces to the crowd, "Always believe in yourself. Do this, and no matter where you are, you will have nothing to fear."
"How right you are!"
Kitty smiled at the Abyssinian.
"And look!"
she announces to the crowd. The crowd saw another platform moving down the street. On top, rows of Egyptian mouths, dressed in royal garbs, bowing down and meowing to the huge statue of the goddess Bastet.
"Praise the goddess Bastet, who teaches grace and elegance, for she is the protector of all of our feline friends against contagious diseases and evil spirits," she announced. "And look, coming this way, there's someone from another ancient time."
The crowd saw another platform moving down the street. On top, a cat band, dressed in colorful masks, play on their instruments as an elderly Russian blue, holding a paper lantern, announces, "Kodai seka no ojo nteji, kimono no naka no neko." The lantern bursts, and the cat is engulfed in flames, much to the awe of the crowd. When the fire is extinguished, in his place, a white cat, dressed as a geisha, rises up, holding a paper umbrella. She showers the crowd with sakura petals from her free paw, while the orchestra plays a traditional piece.
"It's a rather pleasant greeting to be showered with sakura petals, given that they represent the fragility and the beauty of life,"
Katie smiled.
"It's a reminder that life is almost overwhelmingly beautiful, but it is also tragically short. They serve as a visual reminder of how precious and how precarious life is.
The cat's umbrella begins to shake as the handle becomes a leg. Arms on both sides, one eye and mouth with a long tongue on the front. The crowd was scared, but astonished. There was a burst of gunfire, and the crowd screamed and ducked. But Katie laughed and said,
"Never panic! They're just gangsters in their empire!"
The crowd rose to see another moving platform. On top, there were barrels stacked in a pyramid. Next to it, there was an old car parked there. In that car were a bunch of Maine Coons, dressed up as gangsters, armed with machine guns. The crowd was relieved that this is part of the parade.
"Watch out!" she smiled. "They're bootleggers that worked in the local speakeasy, selling some moonshine, hoping that the cops don't shut them down, like in the Prohibition era. But we all know that crime doesn't pay."
The crowd then saw an orange tabby dressed as a cavalier with black boots, armed with a sword.
"Why, that's Puss in Boots!" she smiled. "A cat who uses trickery and deceit to gain power, wealth, and the hand of a princess in marriage for his penniless and low-born master, as well as tricking an ogre into changing into a mouse, which devours him. No wonder he's gay about being a hero."
Just then, there was a sight that made the crowd gasp with fear. It was the large disembodied head of a British Shorthair, grinning from ear to ear. Katie laughed and said,
"Why, if it isn't the Cheshire Cat, doing what he does best, appearing and disappearing. Most of you didn't know that Cheshire Cats grinned. In fact, you didn't know that cats could grin. They can, and most of them do."
The cat's head disappeared, leaving his grin to be the last who was visible. The crowd then see 3 little kittens dressed in mittens with their mother as Katie announces,
"The cat and her kittens, they put on their mittens to eat a Christmas pie. The poor little kittens, they lost their mittens, and then they begin to cry. 'Oh, mother dear, we sadly fear we cannot go today, for we have lost our mittens,' they said. 'If it be so, ye shall not go, for ye are naughty kittens,' she said. 'But this time, they do have their mittens, so they can have some Christmas pie. I just hope they save a piece for me. And look!'
The crowd then saw an owl and a cat that was floating on a beautiful pea-green boat. The owl is playing his guitar to a cat, singing, "Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a beautiful pussy you are, you are, you are. What a beautiful pussy you are."
Looks like the owl and the pussycat have set out to sea on a pea-green boat, with honey and plenty of money wrapped in a 5-pound note,
Katie announced.
"They'll sail for a year and a day toward a land where the bong tree grows and be married, with a ring that's on a pig's nose. And on the next day, they'll be married by the turkey who lives on the hill. Then they dine on mince and quince with a runcible spoon, and dance hand in hand on the sand of the moonlight. And look!"
The crowd then saw a humanoid cat with a slender coat of black fur and a bow around his neck. He skipped and danced, much to the amazement of those who saw him.
"It must be the cat of old Dick Whittington," she announced. "Whittington has a very poor childhood. His master was very poor, but with the fortune he made through the sale of his cat to a rat-infested country, he became a wealthy merchant, and later Lord Mayor of London."
Then they could hear the Market Square clock tower bonging, but it sounded different, like the tower bears another tune. "Turn again, Whittington, thrice Lord Mayor of London." The bells of the clock tower rang out. But now behind him, there was a huge hulking cat with a huge sword. Once the hulking cat was behind him, Dick Whittington's cat stops and shouted, "Here comes a chopper to chop off my head!" The hulking cat made a clean cut at the head of Dick Whittington's cat. The crowd screamed, but the head didn't fall off. Instead, Dick Whittington's cat placed his hands between his head. The crowd was surprised when the hands raised up the head like a helmet. "Hey!" one of the crowd suddenly shouted and pointing up at the mast. "What's that up there?" Oblivious to Katie, standing on the top of the mast was a tall Bengal, dressed as a pirate.
He jumped and landed in front of Katie, pointing his cutlass at her. She stepped back in shock. "All right, you lass," he said. "This ship is mine now!" Just then, a band of cats emerged from below decks, pointing their swords at the 12 mayors and Ezra Cadono at the wheel. The founder and the 12 mayors raised their hands in surrender.
"Who are you?"
she asked. "Ha!" he shouted. "Clearly, you've heard of me before, but these people on the street don't." He shouted to his crew, "Tell 'em, boys!" The cats began ringing out towards the people on the street. "His name is Captain Dapper Paws, he brings you to your knees. In fact, he is the roughest cat to ever sail the seas. He made the barkers tremble and the rats all traumatized. He likes his mortal rivals when they end up paralyzed."
"Dapper Paws!"
she screamed, and raised her hands up in fear. "So!" Captain Dapper Paws shouted. "You have heard of me before. Guard yourself today, little Katie. Guard yourself. I'm a hell cat out for revenge."
"For what?"
"Captain One-Eye managed to kidnap the Princess of Kateria behind me back," he growled. "Forced her to marry him, he did. Not if Captain Dapperpaws has to say about that." The people on the streets gasp in shock as they see a floating longboat. On board were dogs dressed as pirates. Among them, a pit bull wearing an eye patch on his right eye, known as Captain One-Eye, Dapperpaws's mortal enemy. Tied up was the white-furred Princess of Kateria, wailing,
"Kadamia! Mia more!"
The dogs began ringing out to the people on the street. "Behold our Captain One-Eye as he sails on a longboat. He's marrying the princess with his eyes so full of gloat. He's longing for his enemy to face bad luck ahead with his cutlass way up in the air. That Dapper's good as dead." Once again, the Princess of Kateria wailed,
"Kadamia! Mia more!"
"Oh, no, you don't!" Captain One-Eye barked. "You marry me! Don't make it harder than it already is!" Katie calls out to the people on the street.
"But her heart belongs to Dapper Paws. She found his heart so pure. But One-Eye's heart's a nasty black, the one she can't endure. Until at last there came a duel between both dog and cat. But only one remained alive, the guile aristocrat."
Sure enough, Dapper Paws jumped off the Spirit of Freedom and onto the longboat. The princess screamed and ducked down as he single-handedly slaughtered his crew with his cutlass. The people on the street gasped and screamed. However, a dog vanished into thin air when it's slain. All that's left in the longboat was One-Eye, the princess, and Dapper Paws. She called out,
"Kadamia! Mia more!"
"Insolent Grimalkin!" One-Eye roared, raising his cutlass up in the air. "I shall paint this sword with your blood!" "Only the goddess Bastet can determine whose blood shall be used to paint," Dapper Paws exclaimed. "Look upon your death at last, and may your blade grow dull and shatter. Have at thee!" One-Eye lunges, Dapper Paws parries, then attacks. One-Eye tries to knock the sword out of his rival's hand, but Dapper Paws deflects the blade, whirls around, and lunges. One-Eye gets the jump on Dapper Paws and comes in low. One-Eye lunges, but Dapper Paws sidesteps and scratches him in the midsection. Seeing One-Eye vulnerable, Dapper Paws swung low and stabbed him in the heart. One-Eye groaned while cursing the name of Dapper Paws before he dropped to his knees and vanished into thin air. Dapper Paws addressed the people in the street, dropping his cutlass. "Gentlemen, the feared One-Eye, my most mortal enemy, is no longer among the living, and his entire crew massacred. Never again will he darken any door or strike fear within your hearts. Therefore and henceforth, in conclusion and furthermore, ergo and etc. and ipso facto, from this day forth, and throughout the seas, with the princess by my side, we shall reign together as king and queen of cats." Dapper Paws cried out to the princess, "Kadamia! mio amore, sono qui, ti amo, tesoro, ti amo. He carries her by the threshold and declares his love as he sang. De notte quando mi siedo da solo a sognare, di giorni passati a me cose caro, avrò sempre visioni di te, amore mio, e riporta la marea quando eri vicino. Mi chiedo dove sei stato, mia cara, e il tuo cuore a me è sempre lo stesso. Per il sospiro di vento i uccelli ci cantano, stanno solo respirando il tuo nome. Mio amor, io do il mio amore solo a te. Nei miei sogni vedrò la tua faccia, sei il fiore del mio cuore, mio amor. As they kiss, their tails lash gracefully. With an exclamation, Kitty rang out to the crowd.
Now that evil one has fallen, as does his foul Balker throng, with the princess now safe at last, Dapper shall sail along. Upon reaching their rightful home with their flintlocks and their blades, there came a celebration from the king and his dear aides.
The crowd then saw 4 tuxedo cats carrying a litter. Inside, there was a gray Persian with different colored eyes, waving to the crowd. Immediately, Dapper Paw's crew jumped off the Spirit of Freedom and into the longboat before rowing away.
Hail, oh hail, the King of Kataria, she said. Give praise as his servants shall you all, with sunshine and happiness.
From the litter, the king rang out. Oh, there was joy to all when the news flew throughout the land. Oh, throughout Kataria there was dancing on the strand. My lovely little daughter is betrothed with great cause, while we give full praise to the guile and cunning Dapper Paws. Then came Scottish folds, spraying glitter all over the crowd, including the Pratchett's with garden hose, while Louise cats clashed their cymbals together. Half of them played drums out of buckets, several blasted the air with confetti out of cannons. Surely the Pratchett children and their father were enjoying themselves in the parade so far. That is, until their mean-spirited neighbor shows up.
Well, I didn't expect to see you here with your children, Constance snapped. If you ask me, I think this is all too much. Too much nonsense.
Oh, really, Mrs. Malchance? Mr. Pratchett asked. You have no idea how much it makes a person gay, like my children.
I'm already aware of that, Pratchett. No wonder things like this can leave a negative influence on their behavior in the future, which is why you have to take action. I congratulate myself on stepping in.
You can forget it. You don't tell me what to do anymore.
And I see that you refuse to listen to me once again, she hissed. But from now on, I expect you to not let the children spend their summer on worthless frivolity to the exclusion of all else in the future, for it is high time they learn the seriousness of life. I want these children disciplined.
I think what you told me to do will always fall on deaf ears, for anything you told me is wrong. I will not give an inch.
Oh, really? She sneered. Recently, I'm disturbed to hear stories about flying clothes that leave water and soap in their wake. And now, thanks to this parade, I see that this has gone too overboard. I'm a tolerant woman, but the one thing I will not stand for in this city is disorder and moral disintegration. This is why the children will have to stop having fun at an early age, to do what they were told. It is your purpose to punish them if they're bad,
and reward them if they were good. If they were my children, you stay away from them, you devil woman, he barked. You don't have the power to control them. But she remained impervious. If you know what's good, if I were you would refrain from calling me devil woman. I don't see anything wrong about this parade, Constance. All I see is harmless frivolity. Pratchett, if it's all right with you, I should like to make an accurate differentiation between the word frivolity and unadulterated irresponsibility, in which your children still inherit. But at this point, Miss Lenoir has heard enough of this devil woman. With her hickory cane, she summons 2 female black cats. She points to Constance and makes a throat-slash gesture. The cats nod and walk away, chuckling. I have no objection to anyone being frivolous like the other children, Constance barked. But I do respect a certain decorum. I can tell you one thing, Pratchett. One that you'll have to admit. I wouldn't want you standing idly by and letting their excessive frivolity from your pitiful little children undermine the discipline and... Before she could finish, the first black cat walks in front of her and meows angrily. Don't you interrupt me, you overgrown furball! She shouted. This is none of your business! The cat hisses, and the hose erupts, blasting molten chocolate at Constance with bone-jarring force, while the crowd disperses so they won't get affected. The cat batters the devil woman half senseless, having her screaming like mad. Then she cuts the chocolate. Disgusted, Constance screamed in frustration at the cat. You impudent little rat! How dare you! The cat pulls one eyelid down with her paw and sticks her tongue out at Constance before leaving. Just then, the second black cat stops in front of Constance and aims a cannon at her. With a bang, as if it happens instantly, the cannon fires, showering feathers all over her. The cat chortles and walks away. The Pratchett children can't help but laugh hysterically. I'll give you something to laugh at, all right! Constance snarled as she rushed towards them, but Mr. Pratchett pulls her away. See? He eyes her. I told you karma's never done with you, didn't I? You have no power over my children. You never will. Get off of me! You horrible excuse for a parent! She screamed and pushed him out of the way. Then she hears Katie laughing hysterically at her humiliation from the bow of the Spirit of Freedom. Even Ezra Codono and the 12 mayors laugh at her humiliation. Constance looks up at Katie, who said to her, Still not learning your lesson, huh? Still want to carry on, huh? Well, guess what? That didn't surprise me at all, if you've learned nothing! She then began to sing. Considering Constance Malchance, we know she still showed arrogance. She's also snobby and uncouth, to root the fun right out of youth. It's really a battle she'll never win, with strictest acts of discipline. But we all know, to our dismay, that Malchance always gets her way. However, there's a price to pay. We cannot let this wicked witch go ranting like a rabid bitch. If she thinks that her word is law, to me, it was the final straw. I'm not in the mood to see this woman bring forth misery. To every man, woman, and child, being a monster who's so reviled, she brings some absolute disgrace to anyone who even looks at her face. She could have had a joyful life, but she just went and filled with strife. So that's it, Malchance! We have had it! And God forgive for being dramatic when I portray my feline fury as both the judge and the jury. She should be thrown into a lake and get swept away by the wake. She should be transferred to the zoo and be fed to the lions and tigers too, or be boiled in a massive stew and served to a hungry few, or be sent to the desert land and leave her there in scorching sand, or be sent to Dapper Paws and get eviscerated by his claws, or be tossed into an active volcano and get burned up inside the Drano with molten lava frying her braino. Whichever one happens, we're quite sincere that we should never ever hear this devil woman any longer. To you my feline anger's stronger. I must say that you deserve this. This fact no one can dismiss. Rotten, angry, nasty, greedy,
vengeful, vile, atrocious, needy, repugnant, hateful, immature, seedy, terrible, violent, demanding, beady! There are so many more things to say, but regrettably, we do not have all day. Unless you've come to your senses, there will be more consequences. As my name is Katie, I'll say this. One that you better not dismiss. You better think twice before you raid this nonsensical cat parade!
You! Constance shrieked. You're that juvenile who stole my cake! Also throwing it in my face!
How could I possibly forget that?
Katie giggled. See to it that I'll have you behind bars for the rest of your worthless little life, you pig-head brat! Constance screamed in frustration before storming off.
I'm very sorry to say this, but this concludes the parade that celebrates the coming of the dirigible Providence,
Katie announced.
I relieve you now, the people, of the burden of your gay and joyous lives. Always remember the old proverb, when something that isn't real comes around the corner, then it must be believed to be seen.
She laughed giddily as she rang the ship's bell. Then the cats on the streets, the ones who walked on two legs and wear clothes, meowed as they float up and board the Spirit of Freedom before sailing away into the sky, leaving the crowd murmuring to each other about what just happened. Satisfied at Constance's humility, Mr. Cratchit takes the children home. But on the way, he saw Constance with Flanagan and Norm returning from the pub. "Marge Lupin, madame!" Flanagan cried. "This is the second time you came to us!" "I don't care," Norm said. "I want to get this over with before I lose it. I didn't think we have enough to drink at the pub. Now I'll have to endure a serious headache." "Where is she?" she demanded to Mr. Cratchit. "If you're looking for Katie Constance, then you're too late," he said. "She's gone, along with her parade. Guess that's enough nonsense for today, huh?" "For that, I hold you and your children responsible for humiliating me today." "Now wait a minute," Flanagan said. "You can't blame the wee lads for your predicament of looking like a chicken from Chocolate and Feathers. Todd and Audrey did nothing wrong to you. Can't believe this is the second time." "It's going to be the last time, Mrs. Malchance," Norm said. "What did you say?" Constance asked. He grabs her and pulls her forward to him. He happens to lose his temper. "I think you heard me. Even I don't like your temper. I suggest you clean yourself up when you get home before the flies get you. I want you to stop acting crazy. All this talk about things that doesn't exist, like some cat monster attacked you, even though your vehicle has been vandalized." "It was the cat monster!" she screamed. "I don't think you—" "I mean it!" he shouted at her face. She said no more, as she was now trembling. "If you ever come near us or even set foot in the station, you'll be prosecuted for harassment. I hope you remember that, because I will notify the rest of the other divisions of the police force. Surely you don't want to end up in this cell this summer. That's what I'm going to put you if you don't clean up your act. You got me!" She lowered her head in defeat before he released her. She glared at the Pratchett's before going home. "Mr. Cratchit, this isn't like you," Norm sighed, tired. "I mean, you work in a bakery. Why would you say something like that, behaving like most of the people in the city? Why?" "She deserved what she got," Mr. Cratchit said. "Why?" Flanagan asked. "For what?" "For getting on Princess Kitty's bad side today," Mr. Cratchit said. "Princess Kitty?" Norm asked. "The girl with the pink hair under the alias Katie of Koriko," Mr. Cratchit said. "So the lass's name isn't Katie?" Flanagan asked. "You say that girl in the pink hair we saw a few weeks ago, and twice earlier this week, is Kitty? That crazy woman came barging into the pub is because of Kitty?" "If you don't mind, we're taking the day and Wednesday off when we get back to the station," Norm said. "I fear that things in the city will get more and more weird by the minute. Even we are not safe. I'm sorry for raising my voice and losing my temper. It won't happen again.
You take care of yourself. Your children, too. We sure will, officer, Mr. Pratchett smiled. We sure will. Back home, Mr. Pratchett finds that the grandparents and his wife had their attention turned to the radio in the living room, as Clayton Woolbury's voice announces. And now with a special live report, we take you to Main Street, where Phineas Trout, one of our KBC men, has the story. Thank you, Clay, Phineas Trout reports. I'm reporting live from Main Street. It's hard to believe that everyone is in total bemusement following the most unrealistic and the most baffling event in our city's history. Fortunately, this cat parade that was staged is said to be a publicity stunt to celebrate the departure of the Zeppelin from Empire City, probably from the Mercury Theater. In just a few hours, we'll interview theater managers Stuart R. Rochelle and Trevor M. Milliken, who are responsible for the parade they had staged. And in other news, for those who are one of those superstitious people, it's no secret that something strange is definitely going on in the past week. Hold on a minute. This just in. I've just got a report that there has been several hundred cat disappearances in the north side of the city over the past few hours, with little inclination of where they are or why they're gone. In response, the Godona police will do their very best to sort this whole situation out by the end of next week. Turn to another station, Grandpa Jack said. Mrs. Pratchett turned the dial and jazz music began playing on the radio. She turned to her husband and said, Well, you sure had a good time at the parade. You know something? What? Mr. Pratchett asked. With all this talk about cats walking on their two legs, it feels like I can imagine them. How in the world do they do that? Probably midgets in cat costumes, Grandma Eliza snorted. I don't think they're midgets, Lizzie, Mr. Pratchett said. I was there. Besides, Phineas Trout staged that people saw a floating ship, Grandpa Jack said. Mr. Pratchett nodded. Yeah, I saw it too, Dad. The Spirit of Freedom.
The Spirit of Freedom?
Grandma Eileen exclaimed.
I don't believe that. I should have been there myself. Did you really see the Spirit of Freedom?
I should have been to Main Street too, and let the family take care of themselves, Mrs. Pratchett said. But I think it's best if we talk about something else. What good will that do? Grandpa Jack said. It's no wonder that there really are mysteries out there. Some things you just can't explain. Let's not forget, my readers, he's the only person who knows how the cat parade is possible, and the person responsible for everything. Time to wash up, Mrs. Pratchett said. I'll start making food in a minute. Oh, how right Grandpa Jack is. Already, over the next few hours, in every home, radios continue to babble madly about everything that's happened lately in their city, including the cat parade. People of all ages even stop what they're doing, whether they do the laundry, make dinner, go out to eat at a restaurant, ride a bicycle, work at an assembly line, or wash the dishes, just to listen to the radio. It seemed unheard of, yes, but what the people also knew is this. The bicentennial celebration is just a matter of days from now, and the 4-day transatlantic voyage of the dirigible Providence is already underway.